Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Your ratings are due. Happy birthday to you. Patrick Justin McAfee. Happy 37th birthday to you, sir. On this very special day for you and your family, I wish I could deliver better news. Unlike where your ratings are currently located, I don't want to be the party pooper. I really don't. I wish I could come on here and say, Pat McAfee is a monumental success at the worldwide leader in woke. If I really wanted to polish this birthday turd, I could borrow a fabrication from Stevie A. Smith and claim the Pat McAfee Show is the #1 show on television between 11:02 and 11:03 in the media market of Plum, Pennsylvania, home of the plumbers. Unfortunately, though, I don't share the same luxuries as the mainstream media. I don't have the luxury of coming on here and lying to you. If I did, I would lack all credibility. And if I wanted a complete lack of credibility, I would accept a job at CNN. The one good thing about my birthday gift, though, to Pat McAfee, it's not a surprise gift. If you have been following this channel since September when Pat McAfee debuted at ESPN, you knew exactly what was coming because I have been telling you his ratings would crash the closer we got to summer for the past 8 months. But before we get into these disastrous ratings, let me get my shameless plug out of the way. Link to the Behind the Line merch store in the description below. Shirt I am wearing right now that's got the channel logo on it, available in the store. All my channel members, you guys receive 10% off of everything. I posted the discount code yesterday in the community section of the channel. If you haven't already signed up for channel memberships, link for that also in the description below. All right. For months now, executives at ESPN, they have been trying to convince us that Pat McAfee is working out at the network. There's nothing to see here. Everything is rainbows and cucumbers, woke hugs all around. They tried to convince us that they are pleased with Pat McAfee's performance. Pat McAfee's a big star on YouTube. His numbers are great! Like I've said before, ESPN did not break the bank for Pat McAfee so he could draw numbers on YouTube. You know who else performs well on ESPN's YouTube channel? Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe. Hey, it's me, Shay. Matter of fact, at least from what I have seen, Stevie and the grown man who calls himself Shay, they are performing better than Pat McAfee on YouTube. But that's irrelevant. ESPN is paying Pat McAfee $17 million a year to draw ratings on television. Obviously, he ain't doing that. But the question is, why does ESPN continue to polish the turd? Why does ESPN put on this public front that Pat McAfee is exceeding their expectations? They're doing this now because they're only 1 year into this deal. Sometimes we all have a tendency to not want to admit when we've made a mistake. Or in the case of ESPN and Pat McAfee, sometimes we have a tendency to not want to admit we fucked up. For example, it is painfully obvious to anyone who watches the Pelicans that Brandon Ingram and Willie Green have got to go. It's painfully obvious to everyone except David Griffin. Why? Because the Weasel and B.I., they're his guys. When you have a personal investment in people, you're willing to put up with a lot of shit hoping they eventually succeed and prove you right. I think that is where ESPN is right now with Pat McAfee. Just think of all the negative publicity that has been generated by Pat McAfee in the last 7 or 8 months. Back in late September, early October, after we pointed out the fact that Pat McAfee was struggling to resonate with ESPN's audience, ESPN sent out a press release claiming they were pleased with the performance of Pat McAfee. Even some in the mainstream media were confused by this because it was obvious that Pat McAfee was struggling. A couple of weeks later, The Athletic released that poll. According to The Athletic, The overwhelming majority of ESPN's audience for College Game Day, they cannot stand Pat McAfee. You had the situation with Aaron Rodgers referring to Travis Kelce as Mr. Pfizer. He didn't know it at the time, but the official title should have been Travis Swiffer. My inside sources are telling me as soon as Taylor Swiffer proposes to him, Travis, he is going to be taking her last name. And who knows? Who knows? He might even keep the feminine part of his name and choose to identify as Kelsey Swiffer. There was the controversy between Aaron Rodgers and the sensitive Jim Kimmel. You guys remember that? Aaron Rodgers made a joke about Mr. Sensitivity being on some list. Can't remember which list it was, the list of Jericho, the list of huge embarrassing failures. Either way, Jim got all in his feelings about it. Pat McAfee announced that Aaron Rodgers was being removed from the show. A couple of days later, he's back on the show. Then you had the volatile situation with Norby Williamson. Norb, he was the former boss of Pat McAfee. Now, I don't think he was over him directly, but he was one of the longest tenured executives at the worldwide leader in woke. Pat McAfee called him out on live television, claiming that Norb was sabotaging the Pat McAfee Show by releasing his ratings to the media. I guess I'm sabotaging the show too by releasing his ratings every few weeks. I never thought the truth was a form of sabotage. But I guess it makes sense. Because the worldwide leader in woke, they are allergic to the truth. Norby Williamson, he ends up getting fired. ESPN claims the firing of Norb had absolutely nothing to do with Pat McAfee. I think they called it creative differences, which, to be fair, that's probably true. From what I understand, Norb, he wanted SportsCenter to return to its old time slot, which is currently occupied by Pat McAfee. Other executives at ESPN, they wanted to continue throwing $17 million into the abyss, hoping this show would eventually catch on. Basically, Norby Williamson wanted to put a show on the air that was cheaper to produce and would draw decent ratings. The rest of upper management at ESPN, they weren't ready to admit that they had made a mistake with Pat McAfee. I can't think of anyone else in radio and television who's consistently underperformed but had this much power. I gotta give credit to Pat McAfee. I mean, this is unprecedented. Question is, how long can it last? Back in January, Pat McAfee averaged 390,000 viewers. Now, I told you guys at the time, that was as good as it was going to get. His show is primarily focused on football, college football, the NFL. The peak of his drawing power would naturally be during football season. And that is the case for most of sports media. First Take, they set a record in January by drawing 1.5 million viewers. I think it was the Monday after Wild Card weekend in the NFL. But once we get past March Madness, once we get closer to summer, I expected Pat McAfee's ratings to crash. And that is exactly what's happening. Last month, the show averaged 290,000 viewers. His lead-in First Take, 486,000. Just like he was doing throughout the fall and the winter, Pat McAfee losing 40% of First Take's audience. Every morning, ESPN's losing 200,000 viewers when Pat McAfee goes on the air. That is not sustainable. When you are paying someone $17 million a year at minimum, you're expecting him to at least maintain the audience. What you're not expecting him to do is lose half of it. ESPN, they have put themselves in a bad situation here by overvaluing Pat McAfee. Soon, if they haven't started already, negotiations will begin for Stephen A's new contract. I believe Shannon Sharpe is signed through the end of the NBA playoffs, so if they want the grown man who calls himself Shay back on First Take during football season, they're going to have to pay him. And they're going to have to re-sign Shannon Sharpe because he has significantly grown First Take's audience. Look at this situation. Look at this situation from the perspective of Shay and A. Stephen A is making $12 million a year, but that's not just for First Take. He is expected to appear on SportsCenter, pre- and post-game shows for the NBA, covers major UFC events. God only knows what else ESPN has Stephen A. Smith doing. The dude is everywhere. I don't know what Shannon Sharpe is being paid. Some claim it's 5 million, some claim it's 10 million. Whatever it is significantly lower than what ESPN is paying Pat McAfee. If you're in the position of Shay and A, what would you do? I would be demanding more money. Stevie and Shay, they have all the leverage here. Since ESPN overpaid Pat McAfee, they have put themselves in a situation where they're going to have to overpay Stevie and Shay. Since Pat McAfee's making $17 million, Stephen A. Smith will probably demand 25 million. Shannon Sharpe might demand 20 million. That would put them in the same category as Sean Hannity and other personalities at Fox News. The difference is Sean Hannity's drawing 2-3 million viewers while Stephen A. Smith draws less than 500,000. These contract negotiations, along with their current negotiations with the NBA, it's coming at a time where revenue is rapidly declining at ESPN. They have lost billions of dollars in revenue every month because cable and satellite subscribers who never watched ESPN, they finally got tired of paying for it. There is good news though. There is good news for Pat McAfee. As long as Skip Bayless is on television, Pat McAfee, he'll never be in last place. Bad news is, I don't think Skip Bayless will be on television much longer. And honestly, I don't know how long Pat McAfee will last at ESPN. This dude has never finished a contract. Didn't finish his contract with Barstool, didn't finish with Fox Sports or FanDuel. If I had to guess, all of those deals came with a lot less pressure than working at ESPN. I know we make fun of ESPN. I know it's the worldwide leader in woke, but in terms of mainstream sports media, ESPN is the big leagues. Expectations are far lower at FS1 than they are at ESPN. Pat McAfee, he's no longer being compared to YouTubers. He's being compared to Stephen A. Smith. With his tendency to leave contracts early, why would that tendency suddenly change at ESPN? With added pressure and added expectations, why would that tendency suddenly change? Give me your thoughts on this. Pat McAfee ratings decline again, and it's only going to get worse from here. There's been a day or two in March and April where Pat McAfee drew less than 200,000 viewers. I think we could see that become the norm during the summer. Is this sustainable? How long can this relationship last between ESPN and Pat McAfee? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. Appreciate your support. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter, and I'll see you guys later.